Viewer discretion is advised.
Gail Miller is the widow of Larry Miller, who owned a bunch of car dealerships and movie theaters. I know you're going to ask if the Millers are Mormons from Utah, and yes, they are Mormons from Utah. Their entire existence, the great Stockton and Malone, the misnomer of being the Jazz despite being in Salt Lake City, your late 90s success, all of that is erased from one single triggering moment. This shot. And yes, he pushed off. Dear Utah Jazz, I'm sorry I let everyone down. We really didn't have a chance against the Rockets last year anyways. I guess they pulled our card. Signed, Ricky Rubio's hamstring. Another beatdown handed out by the Bucks, their third entry on this list. 9 male deer had 10 points or more, including future executive Ernie Grunfeld, who scored 18. The Jazz only won 26 games that season, and the Bucks didn't even finish above 500, so basically it was one of those games where the kid everyone picks on beats up the kid everyone else picks on. Like me making fun of LARPers.
Lightning ball! Lightning ball! Lightning ball!
After 25 years of sweat, injuring himself, getting yelled at to get the F off the court by KD, the man who played the Jazz Bear was fired earlier this season. According to team sources, there was a rift between the man behind the mask and the team. He probably asked for health insurance. Dude was replaced in an instant. It's not like any of us could tell anyway. Yep. That's the name of this place, as it really looks like you can name your arena pretty much anything these days. Opened in 1991, it used to be called Energy Solutions Arena, a company that handled nuclear waste. Some fans cheekily called it the Chernobyl, which is hilarious. But now the place is basically an ad for home security systems. Statues of John Stockton and Karl Malone are outside, and they had several meltdowns against the Bulls. John Stockton and Karl Malone made an entire career out of being slimy little weasels. Though one of the most productive duos in the history of basketball, both Hall of Famers dished out their share of elbows, illegal screens, and bruises. Malone would maul players and then cry foul if he got touched. Stockton would use his small size to his advantage and set illegal screens while spearing people. Dennis Rodman called Stockton dirty. Congrats to Rudy Gobert, the Defensive Player of the Year, who managed to hold the rest of the league to 0 points the remainder of the season. Yeah, many have said that joke, but the dude did make it a point to mock this shit, and now the world has no f***ing sports. You do not get a pass like Andrei Kirilenko. If only Donovan Mitchell could score with the same efficiency that Gobert infected other people.
Jazz Bear, Utah. First off, why is a bear the mascot and not a musician or something? Why does the bear look like he just injected himself with 80 marijuanas? The headband is a pretty cool touch, but other than that, it's pretty bland. Rating 4 out of 10. Utah Jazz, Karl Malone. Karl Malone is a massive piece of shit as a human being, and I feel guilty for praising him, but this is a basketball video, and the man is, unfortunately, one of the best basketball players of all time. His consistency and production in the regular season is quite honestly flat out remarkable and worthy of a top 2 or 3 player ever. But unfortunately for Karl, there's this thing called the playoff, and almost every single year of his career he crapped his pants once he got there. His production stayed around the same, but his efficiency fell off of a cliff, and in the end, the mailman lost 18 playoff series with the Jazz. Think about that. For 18 straight years, this guy ate shit. Maybe there's still some hope left in the world after all. Utah Jazz, Dante Exum. I'm old enough to remember the Dante Exum hype when he was coming into the league. He was held up as an Australian Kobe, which is hilarious looking back considering how bad he ended up becoming. Utah took him 5th overall in 2014, but Exum struggled with shooting and dealt with repeated injuries that stunted his potential. He just never really put it together and never became anything more than a hustle player off the bench. He lasted 4.5 seasons with Utah before finally being traded. He lasted 1.5 more seasons with Cleveland before falling out of the league after 2021. He's currently playing overseas. Utah Jazz choking away fourth quarter leads in games 1, 5, and 6 of the 1997 NBA Finals. It took the duo of John Stockton and Karl Malone 12 seasons together to finally make an NBA Finals. 12 is an important number to Karl Malone, but I won't get into that right now. Here's what you need to know. Basically, Karl Malone not only is a terrible person, but he's also one of the biggest chokers in NBA history. He choked away Game 1 at the foul line. Game 5 was MJ's famous flu game, game where Karl Malone disappeared late in the fourth quarter, and Game 6 was the infamous Steve Kerr game-winning shot where the Jazz missed a bunch of layups and a bunch of open shots and basically just forgot how to play basketball. They could have very easily beaten the Bulls if they had just made a couple more shots, but thankfully for Chicago, Michael Jordan willed all of those shots out of the basket with his killer instinct, something that LeBron James has yet to learn. Utah Jazz, Colin Sexton. I wanted to say Russell Westbrook just because his $47 million contract is on the books, and I used John Wall as an example for Houston even though he didn't play for them this year, but Wall at least actually played for Houston. Westbrook never played for Utah, so I'm going to go with Colin Sexton instead. Sexton is a pretty limited player who's capable of some nice scoring outbursts, but doesn't really give you much else. But despite that, he was paid almost $17 million last year. I am not a fan of his game. Utah Jazz, Karl Malone, 1998. Hey everybody, it's Karl Malone. We all love him, don't we? Not really. Anyway, there weren't that many great options to choose from, obviously, so I had to go with Malone's 98 playoff run, where he averaged 26, 11, and 3 on 47% shooting, which was well below his normal regular season efficiency as per Karl Malone standards. He had good advanced metrics, although again, well below what he had in the regular season, and his best performance came in Game 5 of the 98 finals, where he helped Utah stave off elimination temporarily by putting up 39 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists on 63% shooting. Utah Jazz, Greg Foster. Oh look, another front court player that MJ got to play in the finals twice. Unbelievable. What are the odds? Foster played 4 years for the Jazz, appearing in 272 games, averaging 4.1 points, 2.7 rebounds, and nothing else of note except for his horrendous 43.6% field goal percentage. In the playoffs, it was not better. He appeared in 60 playoff games and averaged, well, you can see for yourself how terrible it was. Definitely way more difficult to beat this guy than Tim Duncan and Kawhi Leonard and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. Utah Jazz. The best player in franchise history impregnated a 13-year-old, and the second best player in franchise history is a conspiracy weirdo who never scored 35 points in an NBA game despite having nearly 1,700 tries at it. Utah is also famous for being one of the most racist environments for black opposing players. It's karma that this team has never won a ring and probably never will now that they're rebuilding again. Jazz fans single-handedly made Rudy Gobert the most hated player in the league with their advanced stats that overrate the fuck out of him. The state of Utah sucks ass.